Hello everybody, my name is Fofox and welcome to another episode of League of Legends Patch Notes. Oh yes, we're going to be taking a look today at the mid-August patch notes. They're pretty extensive, to be honest. This is the Katarina update though, so it has to be. This is supposed to be, or was supposed to be, the Rengar the Pride Stalker update, but he's not going to be able to be in this one. He's doing some further testing on the PBE. They're trying to work some things out with him. Tweak numbers. I'm okay with it. When they release a new champion, I'd rather he be in a good state than, you know, Vayne or Ezreal style release. So we're going to jump on into this one. Quite a few changes, but most of those are to Garen and to Katarina, as Katarina is being completely reworked, gameplay and art. So that's good to see. She'll no longer have the fluttering tentacle hair off the back of her. And Garen is being tuned so that his late game is viable. He's just been absolutely devastating early, and late game he falls off, he runs in, silences, spins, and done. So, it's good to see them reworking him. Let's start going through the notes though. Garen, we're going to go through these pretty in detail because he is really getting changed. So, base health regen reduced, base health per level also reduced, base attack damage reduced. They're really pulling down his early game. I mean, you can see this just from these three. They're being reduced 1 by 1 on his health regen, by 0.1 on his regen per level, and he's getting his base attack damage reduced from 60 to 56. So, they're taking his early game down, but they're making it so he scales a little bit better. His attack damage per level is being increased to 3.5 from 3. So, they're trying to make it so his late game is a lot better, and that's what Morello and Freak have really stated that they want to do with him. So, Perseverance, his passive, we're going to get into this. Delay increased to 9 seconds from 7. That is necessary. Garen is one of those champions where if you leave him alone in lane, he just comes back. I mean, it's his passive. He regains a massive percentage of his health every second he's not taking damage after X amount of seconds. So increasing that to 9, totally good. No longer deactivates when damaged by lane minions. That's fantastic for him. It's the same thing though as Misfortune. He and Misfortune had the same issue, no longer with Garen of course, that when they were touched in lane, even by like the little caster minions that decide they randomly want to hit you, especially on Garen because he's a melee champion, you lose your passive, and it's terrifying. So making it so that he doesn't lose it by lane minions, that's fantastic. Although, it is going to mean that if he trades and the opposing champion does not trade with him, so he attacks that champion, hits him with Perseverance, and they just run, and all he's doing is taking lane minion damage, he's not going to take hardly any damage. Gaining percentage of health back, he's almost going to regain what he takes from minions. Now displays health regen, that's good as a tooltip. Decisive Strike, this one was really reworked. Cooldown reduced to 8 seconds from 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. So it's 8 seconds at all ranks now. The movement speed on it was increased to 35% at all ranks instead of scaling from 15 to 35. His movement speed has been adjusted a little bit on it. It now lasts for 1.5 seconds at rank 1, 4.5 at rank 5, instead of 4 at all ranks. That's really going to help on his abusive lane stuff, especially as mentioned in the patch preview. Garen could just run for 4 seconds and be like, okay, I am on top of you. It was almost like a Volibear style of, I'm coming at you and you're not going to be able to stop me. Base damage was increased to 30, 55, 80, 105, 130, from 30, 45, 60, 75, 90. So they really put some late game damage on it. They left the early game the same. Silence duration. Now this was one of the biggest problems, was that Garen's silence was just like, especially against AD casters and stuff like that who rely on their abilities, he was terrifying because he shuts you down for 2.5 seconds. Just silence. You can't do anything. All you can do is auto attack. Whereas now, it's 1.5 seconds up to 2.5 seconds. So that really took down his early game abusiveness. This Decisive Strike, which speeds him up, now removes slows on activation. So the slow removal rather from Judgment was removed and placed in Decisive Strike. Which makes sense since he's going to be running faster, and how in God's name would he run faster when all of a sudden he's spinning? It never made any sense. Now it does. Good job, Riot. I applaud you. Ken, now Critical Strike. That's going to be an important one. Decisive Strike had this damage on it where it was like, okay, you can deal a lot of damage early game because it has a massive base. It scaled all the way off of his bonus attack damage. It already had a lot of damage on it, and now it can critically strike. Again, which means at some point it must have been able to. I did not know that. That's really going to help his late game. All of this is for his late game. So his early game is getting taken down, ability to critical strike. So once you get an Infinity Edge or something like that, if you decide to on Garen, then you can crit with that move. It's really going to make getting crit on Garen almost as fantastic as it is on, say, Gangplank or an AD carry. Because now Judgment can crit, Decisive Strike can crit, his basic attacks can crit. I mean, honestly, the only thing that cannot critically strike is his ultimate. And I mean, could you honestly imagine if his ultimate could crit? Holy crap. Critical strike for 800. Oh, well, there's a whole carry dead. Buff duration reduced to 4.5 seconds from 6. This is a curious thing. I'm not exactly sure what this part means because it says buff duration reduced to 4.5 from 6 seconds. Okay. Movement speed duration adjusted to 4.5 seconds. So it's almost like it's repeating itself. You could say in the comments below whether you think that's what it is or if it's a different buff. I'm not an avid Garen player, so I'm assuming it must be something else. Let me know in the comments below. Be happy to hear it. Fixed Garen's next basic attack, Decisive Strike, no longer occurs unusually quickly. That's good. Fixed another bug where he used to consume Decisive Strike even if the target died or he failed to finish casting it, it would still hit, and it still does. That's good. It no longer has that issue of not hitting. And now he follows his target. That's good. Courage was reworked a lot. Changed to passively increase armor and magic resist by 20% instead of 0 to 25 based on the amount of minion kills he got. Basically, it made Garen a tank without him having to build anything. I mean, he was really tough to kill. Damage reduction, rather, adjusted to 30% all around instead of maxing at 36%. So late game, it's a little weaker. Early game, it's better. Active now grants 30% crowd control reduction. That is interesting because now Garen's who build that crowd control reduction build. So they go with their Mercury Treads instead of, say, anything else, which honestly I'm not sure why you would. You might go with Ninja Tabby if you're facing an AD heavy team, but 30% crowd control reduction on top of the already what you get with Mercury Treads is going to be ridiculous. It's going to be another Aurelia. So, I mean, shutting him down is going to be very hard. You're going to have to pull an Ashe or someone like that to really slow him at all times. Duration adjusted a little bit so that now it's longer at later ranks and it's shorter at level 1. That's good because this is really honestly the last skill you level up. So he's going to be stuck at 2 seconds for the most part instead of 3 at all ranks. He can now go from 2 to 6 if he decides to level it up. Cooldown adjusted. It's a little shorter early game and it's a little longer late game. Not much there. Judgment. Changed a bit. Not gonna lie. Judgment has been adjusted to 20 to 120, but now it scales off of his total attack damage. And this is a first, actually, for something that Riot has done, is they're making his total attack damage scale as well. So, he has a 0.7 ratio at rank 1 and a 0.1 ratio from his total attack damage at rank 5. This is really interesting because they're trying to make it scale better into late game, but they're trying to make it so that early game, he doesn't just spin on top of you and destroys you without any chance of trading. So, I see it and I really like this from what Riot is doing. I love the scaling AD ratio. But My concern is the abusiveness of it. I mean, we'll see. I'm not going to make any prejudgments right here. The game is just out. No one's played too much of him, so we're going to see how he goes. That damage was scaled down, by the way, from 50, 90, 130 to 10. I mean, they pretty much halved the amount of base damage it has. That's good, though. And that is per second still, I believe, instead of total. So, he still does a lot. Just nowhere near as abusive early. Damage dealt to minions increased to 75%. Oh my gosh, you can clear minion waves now. It was kind of ridiculous why it was 50%, but it made it so that you couldn't just push a lane and leave. And it still doesn't, but it helps. It makes it so you don't lose minion kills because you're spinning in the middle of a group. As much, at least. No longer removes slows. This is interesting, though. Ignores unit collision during judgment. So now you can walk through anything. But you lose 20% movement speed when you're spinning through minions. This is going to make it so that if you're just sitting in the middle of minions and you spin, you're not going to be able to trade with a person who is on the other side. They can run, and they'll be okay. They'll finally be able to escape a Garen by running down the minion line. Even though he can go through them. That's fine. Couple fixes on it. And his ultimate cooldown was adjusted to 160, 120, and 80 from 140, 120, 100. So it's a little shorter late game, a little earlier. Or a little longer early game. That's good to see. But that's it for Garen. That's it. Yeah, that's it for Garen. That only took me 12 minutes to go through all the changes. So, yeah, pretty extensive. Gangplank, removes scurvy. It was fixed. That's all I can say. It now removes blinds. Katarina is the biggest one. Jace took... Jace here has been fixed a little bit. He's a good champion, but they're just increasing his responsiveness. Katarina, though, took a complete revamp. So, her passive, now reduce, is still the same. Except you do not gain more gold from kills and assists. So, champion kills or assists reduce Death Lotus's cooldown by 10 seconds and refresh basic abilities. Okay, so still refreshes everything. It's a little bit less on how much it refreshes the passive, but you're still able to refresh it almost continuously. We'll see. The cooldown was reduced, so... Bouncing Blades, that's the biggest one that they've been talking about. Katarina had this thing where she would throw her Bouncing Blades around, especially after level 9, and they would just fly around. And they would randomly target champions. Sometimes they would hit things that were far away, sometimes they wouldn't. She was a fun champion, but she was one of those where it was just like, you either could trade with her, and she didn't stand a chance, or she bounced blades off you so much that you just couldn't do anything. So... the cooldown was reduced on it a little bit. Well, it was reworked. So now it's 10 down to 8 seconds. It's still fairly long, but now she throws a dagger, which deals only up to a max of 190 with a 0.5 ability power magic damage. 0.5 ratio magic damage. So it now hits for less, and it bounces only to the 4 closest enemies, dealing 10% less per bounce. So you have 100% on the first, and you have 60% damage on the last. Enemies hit are marked for 4 seconds. Once they have damage dealt to them, which is like whether you Shunpo onto them, a basic attack, Death Lotus, whatever you happen to hit them with, it consumes it and deals an extra 15 to 75 damage with a 0.2 ratio. Technically, if you hit everything, you have a 0.7 ability power ratio plus, what's it going to work out to? About 250-ish, a little bit more damage. So you're dealing a little bit more than Bouncing Blades, but you're really putting yourself at risk. Sinister Steel. This is a brand new ability. 4-second cooldown at all ranks. Whirl's Daggers, dealing 40 to 200 damage with a 0.5 bonus attack damage and 0.35 ability power damage ratio. If she hits an enemy champion, she gains 12 to 44% movement speed. This is a great ability. But I don't want to say if it's going to be enough to replace the amount of damage that she seems to have lost from everywhere else. She's, I don't know, because what it does is, I mean, it's at a 4-second cooldown, and this is replacing her old ability, so it gives her more damage. Technically, yes, it gives her more damage. But what it doesn't do for her is it doesn't really give her the utility that she used to have. I don't know. You know what? We're just gonna see how this one plays out. This is a really hard one to make a judge on because yes, it deals more damage. So you can Bouncing Blade, Shunpo in, Sinister Steel. That is a lot of damage. But it doesn't have the same utility. I don't know. From this point of view, I'm gonna say this right now, and you can leave your comments in the section below. See what you think. She is able now to deal more damage reliably than she was prior. If she pulls off a full combo. So, Bouncing Blades, Shunpo's in, Sinister Steel, Death Lotus is going to deal more damage. But, at the same time, it could deal less. Just because if you don't get the whole thing in, then you're going to be having some issues. Shunpo now has a massive cooldown, Riot decided to give it. 14-second cooldown at level 1. You know, if you leveled this first, that wouldn't be too bad because it goes down to 6. Moves to target location, deals 40 to 160 damage, so really low base. At a 0.5 ability power ratio, that's a fairly low ability power ratio. Fairly. I'm going to say fairly. Magic damage if dealt to a target. Okay. So it deals a fair amount, but it's 160. I mean, it used to be 240. That is a lot of damage. That is 80 damage that they just dumped off this ability and put into, say, Sinister Steel. And they took off like 50 damage off Bouncing Blades. So cumulatively, she lost 80 and 50, so she lost 130 damage. But she gains 200 damage off of Sinister Steel. So she's dealing at base about 60, 70 more-ish. I mean, without ability power ratios, without attack damage ratios. She's got a little bit higher base if she does everything. And her passive was now moved from Killer Instincts to Shunpo, which is, after using Shunpo, Katarina gains 20% damage reduction. It was reduced a little bit, but that's good to see it's on an ability now. Death Lotus. I don't know, this is interesting. 60, scaling down to 50-second cooldown, becomes a Fury of Blades, as she says, dealing 400 to 600 damage over 2 seconds. So there's a second reduction now. But, oh wow, okay, this is interesting. 0.3 bonus attack damage ratio, or plus 3 bonus attack damage. Plus 3? Whoa! Okay. And plus 1.75 AP ratio. Holy crap. So they really increased the damage that Death Lotus is capable of. Oh, massively whoa. Maybe not. Because maybe the last... Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe they didn't reduce it. Or increase it that much. Because the old one calculated it off of each dagger. I don't know. I don't remember the old one. We'll have to see. Katarina is like, we'll wait and see kind of thing, because she's given a lot of new abilities and she's been reworked, and I don't want to say anything that's too concrete because it's honestly an assumption that I have to make because I haven't been able to play her. But looking at these numbers, she's looking very potent still. I mean, it used to be 80 damage, if I'm correct, per dagger, and she used to throw 10 daggers over the course of 3 seconds, so they've lowered her base damage a little bit. I know that much. But I don't know if they've increased that bonus attack damage and AP ratio. We'll have to see what it feels like. I'm sure Riot, if it's a problem, Riot will fix it. But that's Katarina. So it looks really good. They've done a great deal for her. But we'll see. The rest of the updates, fairly minimal actually. Kale, Righteous Fury, ability power ratio was increased a little bit on it. I think they're trying to make it so that people build Kale more hybrid instead of like an attack damage carry who's just super healthy and has an overpowered ultimate. I think that's what they're doing. Pantheon, they're making it so that he's now slightly in front of his target instead of on top of them. I don't know why they did that, really. I mean, in front of the target instead of directly on top of them. I mean, that really feels like it's going to make it so that the person runs forward, which is the same direction that they were running. They're going to run out of your typical combo of Aegis of Zonia and then Heartseeker Strike. Bug fixes on Shyvana, not that big. Teemo actually got some little bit of love here. Damage on impact increased to 10 up to 50 from 9 to 45. And they increased the ability power from 0.14 to 0.4. So that's like a 30% increase. AP Teemo is going to be a lot more interesting now. The poison ability power was reduced, though, only by a smidgen. It went from 0.14 to 0.1. That's not that much. And then a few bug fixes where poisons were lasting a little too long. And it now correctly updates the values. Varus got a bunch of fixes as well. Piercing Arrow now hits targets at the end of its range more reliably. That was always super annoying. You fire this target, and it's got like 100 health left, and the arrow passes through, and nothing. It was very saddening. Ability power ratio on Blightstack increased to 0.02 per stack from 0.01. I really don't know why they did that. I mean, he's an AD carry. He doesn't build AP at all. Like, zero. I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I guess you could have a little bit of AP on him if you wanted to, but I don't know. Chain of Corruption, though, was increased. Missile speed width increased to 100 from 60. That is awesome, because that thing was so skinny to try to hit. I mean, it was honestly like throwing an Ezreal Q that didn't move quite as fast. They increased the visibility. That's good. The spread range was increased by 100, and the tendril break range was increased by 50. So, good to see on Varus. No real massive buffs, but it's, you know, a little bit of quality of life stuff. Ziggs was fixed a little bit. Zyra was hot fixed, and I'm going to let you run through the patch notes on that one because, or not the patch notes, run through the hot fix on that one because, I mean, honestly, she did do a lot of stuff better. I don't need to explain that. She was nerfed. Just end of story. As for that, no friends list stuff. Even though they said it in the video, the friends list has not been updated to where you can put notes. They're going to release it. They're probably going to release it when they put out Rengar, but that'll be very, very soon. Other than that, not much has changed with the general. So, folks, that is all for the patch preview. That's what we are given. How will this change? What do you think this will affect in-game? Let me know in the comments section below. And I will be more than happy to try to answer some of them at least. But as for now, my name is Fofox, and we'll see you guys next time.